Howdy do, squirrels! Turn on my lights. Yeah, and I forgot lipsticks. I'll have to do that too. Have my tea with me though. Woo! Woo! Yes, and we have lights. We have lights. We have lights. Okie dokie. Last sentence I read was, at length the path became clearer and less intricate, brought them to the end of the wood and into a public road. Taking their way along it for a short distance, they came to a lane so shaded by trees on either hand that they met together overhead and arched the narrow way. A broken finger post announced that this led to a village 3 miles off, and thither they resolved to bend their steps. The miles appeared so long that they sometimes thought they must have missed their road, but at last, to their great joy, it led downwards into a steep descent, with overhanging banks over which the footpaths led, and the clustered houses of the village peeped from the woody hollow below. It was a very small place. The men and boys were playing at cricket on the green, and as the other folks were looking on, they wandered up and down, uncertain where to seek a humble lodging. There was but one old man in the little garden before his cottage, and him they were timid of approaching, for he was the schoolmaster and had school written up over his window in black letters on a white board. He was a pale, simple-looking man of a spare and meager habit, and sat among his flowers and beehives, smoking his pipe in the little porch before his door. "Speak to him, dear," the old man whispered. "I'm almost afraid to disturb him," said the child timidly. "He does not seem to see us. Perhaps if we wait a little he may look this way." They waited, but the schoolmaster cast no look towards them, and sat still, thoughtful and silent in the little porch. He had a kind face. In his plain old suit of black he looked pale and meager. They fancied, too, a lonely air about him in his house, but perhaps that was because the other people formed a merry company upon the green, and he seemed the only solitary man in all the place. They were very tired, and the child would have been bold enough to address even the schoolmaster, but for something in his manner which seemed to denote that he was uneasy or distressed. As they stood hesitating at a little distance, they saw that he sat for a few minutes at a time like one in a brown study, then laid aside his pipe and took a few turns in his garden, then approached the gate and looked towards the green, then took up his pipe again with a sigh and sat down thoughtfully as before. As nobody else appeared, and it would soon be dark, Nell at length took courage, and when he had resumed his pipe and seat, ventured to draw near, leading her grandfather by the hand. The slight noise they made in raising the latch of the wicket gate called his attention. He looked at them kindly, but seemed disappointed too, and slightly shook his head. Nell dropped a curtsy and told him they were poor travelers who sought a shelter for the night, which they would gladly pay for so far as their means allowed. The schoolmaster looked earnestly at her as she spoke, laid aside his pipe, and rose up directly. "If you could direct us anywhere, sir," said the child, "we should take it very kindly." "You've been walking a long way," said the schoolmaster. "A long way, sir," the child replied. "You're a young traveler, my child," he said, laying his hand gently on her head. "Your grandchild, friend?" "Aye, sir," cried the old man, "and the stay and comfort of my life." "Come in," said the schoolmaster. Without further preface, he conducted them into his little schoolroom, which was parlor and kitchen likewise, and told them that they were welcome to remain under his roof till morning. Before they had done thanking him, he spread a coarse white cloth upon the table with knives and platters, and bringing out some bread and cold meat and a jug of beer, he besought them to eat and drink. The child looked round the room as she took her seat. There were a couple of forms, notched and cut and inked all over, a small deal, D-A-L, small deal desk perched on 4 legs at which no doubt the master sat, a few dog-eared books upon a high shelf, and beside them a motley collection of peg tops, balls, kites, fishing line, marble, half-eaten apples, and other confiscated property of idle urchins. Displayed on hooks upon the wall in all their terrors were the cane and ruler, and near them on a small shelf of its own the dunce's cap made of old newspapers and decorated with glaring wafers of the largest size. But the great ornaments of the walls were certain moral sentences fairly copied in good round text and well-worked sums in simple addition and multiplication, evidently achieved by the same hand, which were plentifully pasted all round the room, for the double purpose, as it seemed, of bearing testimony to the excellence of the excellence of the school, and kindling a worthy emulation in the bosoms of the scholars. "Yes," said the old schoolmaster, observing their attention was caught by these latter specimens. "That's beautiful writing, my dear." "Very, sir," replied the child modestly. "Is it yours?" "Mine," he returned, taking out his spectacles and putting them on to have a better view of the triumph so dear to his heart. "I couldn't write like that nowadays. No, they're all done by one hand, a little hand it is, not so old as yours, but a very clever one." As the schoolmaster said this, he saw that a small blot of ink had been thrown on one of the copies, so he took a penknife from his pocket and, going up to the wall, carefully scraped it out. When he had finished, he walked slowly backward from the writing, admiring it as one might contemplate a beautiful picture, but with something of sadness in his voice and manner which quite touched the child, though she was unacquainted with its cause. "A little hand indeed," said the poor schoolmaster, "far beyond all his companions. In his learning and his sports too, how did he ever come to be so fond of me? That I should love him is no wonder, but that he should love me—" And there the schoolmaster stopped and took off his spectacles to wipe them as though they had grown dim. "I hope there's nothing the matter, sir," said Nell anxiously. "Not much, my dear," returned the schoolmaster. "I hope to have seen him on the green tonight. He was always foremost among them, and he'll be there tomorrow." "Has he been ill?" asked the child with a child's quick sympathy. "Not very. They said he was wandering in his head yesterday, dear boy, and so they said the day before, but that's part of that kind of disorder. It's not a bad sign, not at all a bad sign." The child was silent. He walked to the door and looked wistfully out. The shadows of night were gathering and all was still. "If he could lean upon somebody's arm, he would come to me, I know," he said, returning into the room. "He always came into the garden to say good night, but perhaps his illness has only just taken a favorable turn, and it's too late for him to come out, for it's very damp and there's a heavy dew. It's much better he shouldn't come tonight." The schoolmaster lighted a candle, fastened the window shutter, and closed the door. But after he had done this and sat silent a little time, he took down his hat and said he would go and satisfy himself if Nell would sit up till he returned. The child readily complied, and he went out. She sat there half an hour or more, feeling the place very strange and lonely, for she had prevailed upon the old man to go to bed, and there was nothing to be heard but the ticking of an old clock and the whistling of the wind among the trees. When he returned, he took his seat in the chimney corner, but remained silent for a long time. At length he turned to her, and speaking very gently, hoped she would say a prayer that night for a sick child. "My favorite scholar," said the poor schoolmaster, smoking a pipe he had forgotten to light, and looking mournfully round upon the walls, "it is a little hand to have done all that, and waste away with sickness. It is a very, very little hand." And that's all of chapter 24. And I think I'll stop there, but I'll probably be back tonight and start chapter 25. But if I don't, I'll do it tomorrow. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Love y'all. Bye-bye.